Hong Kong, live to CNN's Kristie Lu Stout. So walk us through some of the data, what it says about COVID and the impact it's had on the economy as it goes from some of the toughest restrictions in the world.
Yeah, all this data just marks a really depressing end to what was a very challenging year for China. Look, for 2022, China posted GDP growth of only 3%. And for the fourth quarter, it posted GDP growth of only 2.9% year on year. And on top of that, China's population is shrinking. It's shrinking for the first time since the 1960s. Its total population now 1.41 billion people. Right now, China is counting the cost of its ongoing and historic property slump, but also its zero COVID policy. The zero COVID policy, which really wreaked havoc on the nation's economy last year. You remember the hit that it had on domestic spending, on domestic tourism, on factory output with those protests and disruptions at the iPhone factory in Zhengzhou. The list goes on. Not only that, it also cost provincial governments billions of dollars. We learned that Guangdong province spent 22 billion US dollars just to cover zero COVID expenses like testing and vaccinations. And this is one of the reasons, in addition to the anti-zero COVID protests, why China has suddenly had that U-turn and abruptly ended this policy last month. And now China is in this very difficult transition. This exit wave of infection is underway. But when you talk to economists, they say that the economic pain right now will only be short term. I want you to take a look at this statement that I got earlier from Aidan Yao, who is a senior economist at AXA. And he told me this, quote, Q4 has likely marked the darkest before the dawn. And he went on to say, with the reopening timeline now significantly front-loaded, the economic outlook has brightened beyond the near term, unquote. Now, looking ahead, economic growth in China is set to rebound because of a number of factors. Number one, China is finally going to learn how to live with COVID. Number two, there are signs that the Chinese leadership is easing up on its regulatory crackdown on the tech industry. And lastly, Chinese leaders have recently pledged to stabilize the economy. And that's why a number of economists are saying that they expect economic growth to top 5% in this year, 2023. Back to you, John.